Good afternoon and welcome to Lifestyle Marketing. My name is Kim Britz. I was going to say my beautiful co-host, my wonderful, amazing co-host, Bjorn Salsone. How's it, Bjorn?
Hello, and it's so great to be back finally with you. We're back on the same page, and we also have another B in the room today, so that's even more exciting because I think he talks for the both of us. But either way, it's amazing. So I'm very excited.
So for today's guest, so guys, Bjorn, don't you want to tell us what we are chatting about in this month, and sort of give us a wonderful intro to our amazing guest?
Oh my gosh, this month is so exciting. We're really talking about building brands. And you know, there was one person when I first moved to Joburg, I would never say stalking because that's unprofessional. I would say I did professional research. And his name is Brent Lindeque from the Good Things Guy. And you know, it was so funny. I mean, he started off as someone I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be Brent when I grow up. And then I realized he was younger. So I was like, grow up quickly. And then, you know, one of the things that I loved about Brent is that he just shares really authentically. And, you know, from starting a blog a couple of years ago called The Good Things Guy, and he started it because he wanted to talk about good things in the world. And he's really someone who has, and then he was like a model. And I don't know if you saw that, Kev, he was on GQ and he was on the front cover, and I was like, I really want to be like Brent when I grow up.
I totally missed that. Why did I miss that?
I gotta lose weight and then he got a personal trainer, so then I had to get a personal trainer. And there's so much more, but I'm going to stop talking now and say, Brent Lindeque, welcome to Lunchtime Marketing. We are so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I feel like I'm blushing. That's that's one of the best intros that I've had. Thank you very much. It's very cool to be on the show. I've heard good things, so it's cool to be here.
He charges by the hour, Brent. You can actually rate him out like that. You can I need an intro. Please, can you come on?
That's exciting, and I'm going to keep that in mind.
Cheers to that. Thanks, Kev. I'll pay you a commission at the end.
Thank you. Any kind of advertising moment, right? Brent, so you, for those who don't, I mean, I don't know who doesn't know you by now, but for those who don't, you started a blog. You wanted to share good news. I remember you going on the news and starting to speak about it, and then suddenly it just became this amazing big thing. Don't you want to just give us a bit of entry onto the history of that and sort of how you built that brand? What was your intention? How did you get there? Like, how did this evolve into what it is today?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting story because I don't think it started 6 years ago, but 6 years ago, I didn't start with the idea to create like a good news blog. There was something happening internationally. It started down in Australia. It was called neck nominations. And the whole idea was to drink as much as you possibly could, not tea, more like GNT. And, and then once you did that, you would have to nominate people to outdo what you'd done, like jump out of a helicopter or be on a skateboard or whatever the deal was. That was happening around about December 2013, January 2014, around that time. And it's very funny because it was really the first viral trend that was used on social media to try and push other people to get involved. And what's funny about that is that 6 years ago, Facebook didn't have video. So today we're live on Facebook. And 6 years ago, there was no video. Everybody was doing it on YouTube and hyperlinking those videos to their social media sites. I was watching it from South Africa and I just, you know, drinking's easy. You can find me at a club or a bar on any given night, pre-COVID, and having a good time. That doesn't scare me. But using your social media to be a little bit more responsible or to do something good with was really the idea that I had in the back of my mind. And that came from two places or two things that had happened around the same time. So that December, I don't know if you remember a lady by the name of Justine Sacco, if that rings a bell at all.
No.
So Justine Sacco was an incredible marketer. She works in the PR world in New York. She worked for a really, really big firm, and she had family here in South Africa. And she had, while flying to South Africa, she was tweeting things that she thought was really, really funny. So like the flight went from New York to Heathrow to Johannesburg. And before she got to Heathrow, she was like, oh, cucumber sandwiches, I must be in England, or whatever her deal was. And just before she boarded her flight, she had like 100 followers on Twitter. Just before she boarded her flight to South Africa, she tweeted something incredibly racist, which she thought was funny, and it was coming from a different context. It was about coming to South Africa and something to the likes of, I'm not going to get AIDS because I'm white. That was sort of what she had said.
Ooh, wow.
I remember that.
Yeah. And when she landed in South Africa, she'd lost her job, she'd lost her career. It was really just her whole life had been turned upside down by this one tweet. And at the time, it made me realize that we should be more responsible with what we're posting online, right? Why the hell would I be guzzling beer upside down for my neck nomination, and then 10 years from that, I don't know, go for a job interview, and that's all that's left of me is my legacy. The reason why I mentioned Justine Sacco is because if you Google her today, that's all you will find. Like, her legacy is that one tweet. She doesn't exist on social media. She doesn't have a Facebook or an Instagram, but that's her legacy, which is incredibly sad. I'm going to pause for a second because there's a whole other story there. We now live in a time, and I'll get back to good things guy now, but cancel culture is a huge thing as well, right? We're all about, if someone does something wrong, then we want to cancel them, and it's like, get rid of them. Yeah. There's a very interesting case study that came out of Justine Sacco's story. Sam Biddle was the journalist from Gawker who got hold of the tweet. And he basically ruined her life. And if you go read up on Sam Biddle, he is apologetic every day for doing that to someone. So that's a whole other story. Anyway, so back to neck nominations and Justine Sacco. At the same time, a burger chain had launched in South Africa that same January 2014. And their whole marketing plan was to feed or to give burgers away to people that can afford them. Because then you're giving it to the consumer who's going to come back, right? That's totally so clever. It makes sense. You're going to give them vouchers. And the reason why I say to people that could afford them is because the campaign required you to have data on your cell phone, a car to get to a billboard, photo, you've got to take a photo, you had to have a radio to hear about the campaign, and then send the photo of yourself with this billboard to the radio station to win a voucher for a meal. At the time, I just thought to myself, imagine if that burger chain, and they're massive, I'm not going to give them any airtime, but imagine if they had have taken those 10,000 meals that they wanted to give away for free. And if they had thought about the market that is South Africa, where we have this huge portion of our population that live in poverty, imagine if they'd given 10,000 burgers away to people that needed them, instead of to consumers that would come back. The PR that they would have got out of that would have been massive. Like, you wouldn't even be able to count the amount of likes, and the affinity towards the brand would have just been amazing. But they chose not to. So those were the thoughts that were kind of going on in my head. And then on a random Friday, I got neck nominated. Instead of drinking, I went and fed a homeless person, and I recorded that video, and that video went viral. It was the first YouTube video that I'd ever put up. And within a couple of hours, it had like 10,000 views. And the next day, it had hundreds and thousands of views. And I was then on CNN and Sky News and BBC and Carte Blanche. It was all just like all over the place. During that time, I really fell in love with the medium or the platforms of radio and TV, because I'd never been exposed to that world before. I was corporate. I had worked in an agency. I hadn't ever been in that sort of position. And all of a sudden, I learned about all these, but what we say behind the scenes, what you guys do. So like getting on the radio, being on TV. And my first thought around that was, it's beautiful. Like, you could use this platform to really change the world and to do good. This is something that we can do. So Bjorn, you talk about stalking people.
I'm talking professional research.
Professional research.
Go down on record as professional research. Stalking could get you into a lot of trouble.
The professional research.
Especially talking to a journalist, I'm like, professional research.
Professional research. So during that time, I had been interviewed on 5FM, and I got to meet Gareth Cliff, which again, I'd seen him at clubs and stuff, and I'd never really been exposed in the same room as him. But then I got interviewed, and it was really, really cool. He then, a couple of weeks later, left 5FM and started Cliff Central. And I saw that as a huge opportunity. He's a maverick in what he does. Cliff Central is this incredible brand where they're going to be podcasting. It was all new and fresh, and this was like 6 years ago. Yeah. And so I professionally researched Gareth Cliff. And
you use that now. I do professional research.
And eventually got hold of him and set up a meeting with him and Rena Broomberg, incredible station manager of Cliff Central. And I sat down and I basically said, I would like to do a show, and I wanted it to be good news. And they knew of my story. They knew of what had happened. And Rena said to me, this was on a Thursday. Rena said to me, great, you start on Tuesday. And I was like,
sorry?
What?
Like next month Tuesday. Like,
yeah, like I don't know if 4 days is enough to plan a radio show when I've never done radio in my life. Like, it was a little bit crazy. So yeah, that first show was absolutely deplorable. It was possibly the worst thing that I've ever done in my entire career. But fantastically enough, it was a stepping stone to something a lot bigger. And I worked there for 3 years, had my own show for 3 years. It was really, really cool. And eventually, it was a whole story. I moved on to Jacaranda eventually. Okay, good things, guy. now, so got this radio show.
Can I ask you one question? When do you breathe? I just want to time it.
Never.
And
Never.
Breathe now.
Never. So... yeah, so I was at Cliff Central, and I was producing the show every week, and I was, searching for good news, trying to tell stories of good news happening in South Africa. And I was finding it very difficult to find those stories. They weren't anywhere. It wasn't in the newspapers. There was nowhere to just go and get those stories. And that's really where Good Things Guy was born. So from Neck Nominations to Cliff Central to this space where there was not one place to get the good news. So that's what I built. I decided to build it for the people that needed it.
Incredible. Sure. Question, Brent, do you ever have a bad day? And if you do have a bad day, like, how do you navigate going from, and the reason I'm asking, I'm sure you have a bad day, is because I know that you, or generally, when you share on your social media, you share very authentically. So you go, today was tough, today wasn't great, and then tomorrow you've deleted yesterday's post because you're like, rant's over. But talk us through like how you actually move, because I think a lot of people have your persona. When you and Andrew did MasterChef, there was, you create another persona and. But people also need to know that, you also have a day where you think, I don't want to get out of bed today, but I'm there because of commitment. How do you move from that space of, oh my gosh, is it okay to have wine at 9, even though you shouldn't, to like, let's get into it, what do I got to do, and share good things?
So you talk about authenticity. Facebook Memories is a fantastic thing because I've been on the platform now for like 13 years, whatever the timeline is. And it's great to go into Facebook Memories because I'm exactly the same person I was 13 years ago. I've always been this happy guy. I've always been incredibly optimistic. I've always had a good outlook on life. But something silly happened. And I think it's because of the way that we use social media. But for the longest time, I was only showing my good self. I was only showing my happy self. I was always like uplifting everybody else. And the reality is that is not who we are actually as human beings. There's no one that's going to be happy 365 days a year. No matter how many times you tell yourself as you're getting out of bed, today is going to be a good day, some days are just not. And that realization only came now during lockdown, during this COVID period. For the longest time, I've always thought that I had to be a beacon of light for everybody else, like it was my responsibility. But to have that weight on your shoulders is unrealistic, and it's you can't function like at that capacity. So I'll tell you that it was the 80th day. It was around about 80 days of lockdown that this thing occurred, and my whole world unraveled, which is bizarre, right? What I've learned during this COVID time is mental wellness and mental health is two of the most important things that we can look after. We have to be looking after our heads. I'm going to take a step back so you can understand. Normally, on any given day, I can handle commentators, I can handle trolls, I can handle any of that stuff. That doesn't bother me. And I think because I don't let the comments or whatever affect me. Like, you read over it and you move on. To give you an example, when our finance minister, Nene, when he was fired, that night I went to bed and I was like, damn, man, the country's in a bad way. Like, we're not functioning. Everybody's really feeling terrible. And we need to do something. Like, as South Africans, what can we do? And I didn't sleep very well that night. And the next morning, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, I Googled, what is the best petition site to put a petition on? And the one that popped up was change.org. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I created a petition that was called Zuma Must Fall. It went on to get millions of signatures, and it eventually became a march, and it was all these fantastic things. But during that time, there were these massive supporters of Zuma who were sending me the most grotesque messages. Like, I don't want to mention, but they literally told me that they were going to come to my house and rape me. Like, it was awful. Jesus. That didn't affect me. That didn't get to me at all. Because my mental state was in a good place and I could handle that criticism, and I also knew where it came from. So I would read over it and let it go. Day 80 of lockdown, of being locked in my house, of not being able to go outside, of not being able to function normally, to have this crazy year that we've been having, the loss of income, the loss of businesses, the loss of lives. There was like so much going on. And on that specific day, 3 acquaintances that I knew had climbed on a repatriation flight to Europe. All 3 of them were hairstylists. And they hadn't worked in 80 days. So I put onto Twitter, it was something to the likes of, so many hairstylists are leaving the country, because in my mind, 3 is like so many. So many hairstylists are leaving the country just because they can't find work. Isn't that incredibly sad? Was sort of the tweet that I put out there. The backlash that I got was absolutely disgusting. It turned into this whirlpool of angry people. Like, how is it that they got on flights? How is it that people had money after 80 days? Like, it was me that had created the story. And then it turned into hundreds of people calling me a liar. They were like, you liar. No one got on a plane. Why are you looking for attention? And on the 80th day of lockdown, I had my first panic attack in my whole life at 35 years old. I couldn't breathe properly. It was a proper anxiety attack. And Andrew took away my phone and he deleted the tweet, which is the first thing I should have done. Like, just stop it, like, just get rid of it. And he put my Twitter on private so that everybody could stop attacking me. And he gave me a glass of wine, and then I got into bed.
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing. And I got into bed, and I stayed in bed for 2 days. It was the first time in my life that I've ever felt not mentally well, depressed. And then I realized that it is important to share those feelings with other people. And that was when I started being a lot more vocal on my social media about not being okay. Like, well, I'm not okay. I don't have everything together. I'm not this perfectly packaged whatever. And I have really, really bad days. How do I get through them? By drinking a glass of wine and staying in bed for 2 days. But yeah, so
and putting that on TikTok as well.
And TikTok, there we go. But yeah, so we have good days and we have bad days. And I know that this year has taught me that I need to accept that we're allowed to have bad days. And I need to share that with other people so that they can know that it's okay too, to have really bad days.
Brent, so one of the things that's, as you're speaking, one of the things that stands out for me is a lot of the time people, a lot of what we, Brent, Bjorn and I do is, you know, speaking to entrepreneurs, people out there having, you know, building a brand. Do you think there's you mentioned it briefly of taking responsibility for what it is you're putting out there? How much do you weigh that up from kind of going, well, you know, I'm just going to be honest and authentic, to kind of go, no, actually, I want to create or paint a version of something? How do you find that balance? Because I think a lot of people, some people could get really out of hand and kind of go, I hate, you know, and they really could affect the brand. But I think it's, well, how do you find a comfortable medium between that to uplift and support your brand, and still be authentic? What is that sort of gauge that you use?
So it's a very fine line. And I cross that boundary quite often. I am a human being, first and foremost, but this brand that I've created as Good Things Guy also has a responsibility. And people are very quick to put me back in my box. If I get too political, if I get too opinionated, some people are a little bit, sometimes I'll say, like I'll put a joke out on my personal platforms, but there are people that follow me on there as well. And then they'll come back to me and go like, that wasn't actually funny and you can't be funny. So there is a fine line, and I do try to stay in between that. I cross that line often because I am also human. Especially like when it comes to politics. I really need to stay out of politics. I need to just not say anything about what's going on in the country. But if something upsets me, then I also need to be authentic to myself, right? And I also need to have that sort of conversation and put it out there. There's parts of me, like I would never, I guess I would never put anything, I try always. And this is something I even tweeted today. It needs to be true, it needs to be kind, and it needs to matter if you're going to say something. And that's something I check myself often. Like I'll write a tweet and I'll be like, oh, I'm so angry. And then I'll think, well, does this change the world? Does it make it better? Is your rant going to change anything? And then I just rather keep it to myself. I must tell you though, there's this, Richard Mulholland, has he ever been on your show?
Not yet, kid.
Okay. You have to get Rich on. Rich is this incredible mind. And he taught me a while ago that when you write something down, like if you're feeling something, if there's this rage or you want to talk about a politician that you don't like or whatever, if you write it and then delete it, it does the same thing as tweeting it. It literally, without getting that response, you know, you don't get the backlash and the hate. So yeah, that's how I try to keep a fine line, is that some things I won't put out there.
Fantastic. Brent, I have a question. Let's talk about Good Things Guy. Let's talk about what happens behind the scenes. You know, I always think, you know, Kevin, I always talk about people just go, oh, you've got someone on the show. And then, they see the 45 minutes. They don't see anything, calls, emails, WhatsApps, stuff before post-production, going into the podcast.
Using your hair.
Yeah, so
going grey. So much that happens all the time. Yeah.
So Good Things Guy was born from that idea of sharing good news and having. So basically, on the show that I had, I used to talk about 5 good things that happened every week. Right? Yeah. These are 5 things that have happened. And slowly I realized that there's so much more happening in South Africa that we need to be speaking about it and needed a space to live. So I owned an agency before, and Andrew, my fiance, had come into that agency. We built it together, and he was working as the MD role and I was working as the CD role. And it got to a point where the radio work that I was doing and the writing that I was doing was taking up too much of my time. So at one stage by myself, I was publishing, 6 or 7 stories a day by myself. And it takes a long time to craft and to put them together.
Absolutely.
So I sat Andrew down and I said to him, I really want to see if I can make this work. I want to see if I can turn this into a business. I want to see if I can push this forward. Give me 6 months, pay my salary for 6 months. Let me write.
Let me not work in the business.
Let me not work in the business. Exactly. Pay me for 6 months so that I can really focus on this. Give me a little bit of extra capital so that we can hire like a copywriter or someone to join, a journalist or whatever, to join. And if I don't get this right in 6 months, if I cannot make this business work by itself, then I will close Good Things Guy down and I'll come back to Chaos Theory. And he agreed. He was like, he could see where my passion was and he could see where my focus was going to. Thankfully, within 3 months, I made that business not profitable, but able to stand on its own 2 feet. And that must have been like 4.5 years ago, I think. I could get the timeline wrong. But since then, the little business has grown into 4 full-time employees. Everybody jumps on board. I've got writers that are writing all day. We're publishing up to 15 good news stories on a good day. Sometimes there's not that much good news in South Africa, so we can't do 15. But so it's a fully fledged business. I manage the staffing side. I manage the editorial. So we go through what we'd like to focus on that week. But obviously, as news, you can't control everything that goes out. Some of it's more breaking.
Absolutely.
But entertainment or travel or wherever those go to. The Good Things Guy universe has grown quite a bit. We've got a show on Jacaranda on a Monday night, a show on East Coast on a Saturday. We've got the video that comes out once a week. We've got a podcast that also comes out once a week. Then we've got the articles that come out. I wake up at 5:30 every morning, start editing and making sure that I'm happy with the work that's been done. And I literally do that until 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. We are open 365 days a year. So I work Saturdays and Sundays every weekend. And even on Christmas, we work all the time. So we're just pumping out good news as much as we can. Like you said, you talk about the production of a show and how you have someone on your show for 45 minutes. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. You really have to make things work. And it's funny because we send out a newsletter every Friday that goes out to about 150,000 people. And some of them believe that's all we do. They've never actually visited the website. So they're like, I love your Friday newsletter. It's so great. What else do you do during the week? And I'm like, there's 100 other stories a week that are going out. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it makes me think of like, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, right? Brent, so in terms of, people listen to this and they kind of go, yeah, he probably had lots of money to do it, or, he had this backing, or whatever the story they'll sell themselves. But like, what happens to you, or how did you overcome like a really big failure, something that's like really just didn't work? I know we're like 2 days in bed. I'm like, we get that. But how do you get yourself back to, I want to kick some ass and I want to do this really, really well. What is your process? What is your one thing? What's that driving?
He told you he has wine.
I have wine.
Besides the wine. Being the good news guy, it's like inspiring people. Is it that sort of gets you going every day, working on Christmas Day, kind of going, no, this has to happen. What is that thing for you that sort of drives and fuels your daily habit formed way of being?
So I've been working in the working world since I was 15 years old. I grew up without much. We didn't have a lot of money. And I started working at 15 so that I could afford things, so that I could also be with my friends at Magic Company on a Saturday. Like, my parents didn't have money for that. I've always said, one of my like, what would you call it? Goal. One of my goals was to have Mnet. Like, I didn't even have Mnet growing up. We didn't have that. So, finding and working from an early age, I guess I've worked in really crappy roles. Like, I've done really horrible. I worked for a catering company where we used to drive to Fochville. Who knows? I don't know. It's some mining town. Drive to Fochville, all these young kids, and have to set up a whole sort of wedding venue. So they got a venue. We set up the tables, the chairs, the bain-maries, the food gets prepped. That all goes, and then you work until 11 o'clock that night, and then drive back from Fochville. You're in the back of the truck, those stupid little vans, and you smell like food, and then you sleep for 3 hours, and then you do it all again the next day because you need the money. So I've worked in really horrible situations in my own mind. I'm sure many people have worked in far worse situations, but that for me felt like hell for a good year of my life. That now that I'm doing something that I love, that I absolutely love, it doesn't feel like work. For me to get up and like write and to find stories and to know that you speak about inspiration, to know that someone on the other side is most probably day 2 or day 3 of lying in bed feeling like the world is falling apart. And if they read one of my stories and they're like, actually, that's not that bad, and I am going to get up today, I guess that's what my drive is that it's just, I enjoy what I do and I get to do something really cool for someone else. Also, coping mechanisms. I'm a really good crier. I cry all the time. I think I was telling my mom this morning, because my mom and I were talking about whatever, the country, whatever. And I'm like, I cry every day. Sometimes Andrew will walk into this office and he's like, what's going on? And I'm just like, I need to raise money for someone. So yeah, I'm a really good crier, and I think that's a good release.
So we need to hire you for like, we need someone to be crying at this funeral. Can you come along?
I was just thinking that it's something I probably have in common with you, because Eugene's forever saying, oh, Kevin, you're such a girl. You're such a girl. Come here, my big girl. Like, I'll just watch Grey's Anatomy, and me and Mary...
I'm going to call you. I'm going to use that phrase now that you've made it public.
I cry. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
So
I cry all the time, yeah.
Don't quote me on this, and please don't Google it. I don't want to know the truth, but I read somewhere once, and I've held it so dear to my heart, that our tears are filled with natural painkillers. That actually, when they fall down your... Don't tell me I'm wrong. I don't want to know that I'm wrong, because I believe it. And because I believe it...
I confirm it's true, Brent. It's absolutely true.
I'm going to sit here just like, have my tea. Even though I really want to Google that right now, I'm like, just sit here and have my tea. Don't pop the bubble.
So in terms of what's happening next, Brent, so like, if we can tell everybody what is happening in your world, what's coming up, events, new developments, what is something that you can share and just tell people about? That's really kick-ass.
So I guess at the end of every year, I sit down and I write goals, right? So what do I want to achieve next year? Whether it comes to business or travel or whatever the deal is, what do I want to achieve? And last year, the end of 2019, no one could have predicted what we were going to go into this, or what was going to happen, right? But I had 2 goals, and they all came down to one thing. To speak to people that do not have hope, to speak to people who don't have data, to speak to people who don't have the money to be able to switch on their phones and have a look at Good Things Guy, or go onto Facebook and read the Good Things Guy articles. And that was a goal. I didn't know if that was going to be in some sort of like newspaper form, or if, I don't know, writing pamphlets, or sort of what was going to happen. But that was the ultimate goal. Yeah. Then at the beginning of this year, a very good friend contacted me. He had started like a billboard company called Untitled. And those billboards were going in all sorts of places, in receptionists of hotels, in a lot of the government hospitals, in the mines, in all sorts of places. And he wanted to sell advertising, which was his business, what it was. But in between those adverts, he wanted to show good news. And he wanted Good Things Guy to be a part of that. Wow. So I know, it was this mind blown. I was like, okay, you put it out into the universe and it actually becomes a reality. So that was the first thing that sort of happened. Then at the beginning of lockdown, we got a press release about a company that have got this app and the app is free, and they've got 100,000 users, and those 100,000 users get the news and blah, blah, blah. And basically they were pushing the coronavirus information to these underprivileged and vulnerable communities. And when we got the press release, I was like, that's awesome. Like, if people don't have data on their phones, but they're able to get this information, that's life-changing. That's really life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We wrote the story, and the MD of the company, he's from Cape Town, he phoned me and he was like, we have seen an influx of users and we've seen so much activity from that article you wrote. I never knew about Good Things Guy before. We would love to feature you on the same platform that goes out to these vulnerable communities. And now, yeah, we've gained 35,000 readers a day who read our news for free. They log on every day and they open up the Good Things Guy app through their free app, and they get to read the good news that is happening in this country. And that for me is like a huge, that tick the box. My 2020 is done. Bring on 2021.
What is that app called? I just think like people that are going to listen to this again,
yes.
That would be interested to have it. That you can't remember right now because you've got blank.
I'll get you the name.
I love it. Perfect. That's
I think it's the company's BINU. And the MD's name is Gore. But I'll get you the name and you can publish it or whatever afterwards. It's ingenious. And he's doing great things for vulnerable communities who don't have money. It's really cool. So yeah, that's 2020 done. I don't know what's coming in 2021 though. I've got no cooking clue. Like, I think all of us are just trying to get through this year.
Day by day. Day by day.
One of the most disheartening things is how many people have lost their jobs, how many people are hungry, how our economy is doing. It's very scary. And I think that's all that I like, even put Good Things Guy aside and just help build whatever we can right now, and get everybody up there, get everybody earning some sort of salary and eating again.
I think that's why Bjorn and I do what we do. Bjorn, I'm like, you and I started this with the intention of like, people are like, they are losing their minds. People are going crazy. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. 100%. And I was like, well, we know people, and we have some advice to give. We can share some really useful tips, techniques, and that's really where, the whole lunchtime series has sort of evolved into is how do we add value to people's lives? So, I mean, I agree. It's like, how can we do more of it so that we can uplift people? Because right now we need it more than ever before.
I think what's really harrowing, and it's something that nobody is willing to face yet, is that, I mean, they've just extended the lockdown, right? But that doesn't really mean anything, because when the lockdown ends, there's not all of a sudden going to be jobs for everyone, and the food's not going to be easily accessible, and the tax is not going to go down, and it's still going to be the same. So we've got this almost COVID hangover that's coming, and we all just need to support each other as much as we can right now, really.
Absolutely.
So, I agree.
You know what's so interesting? Yes.
No, carry on.
What I was going to say, one of the things that I'm being sparked as we're talking about here, and Kevin knows I plan a lot of the speakers, the content, what we're going to do, and I'm just actually thinking as a thought process that there's so many small businesses that we can start interviewing, just to talk about how they're developing this. And, that's where when the lunchtime marketing started, it was just sharing different things. I mean, we've had everything from websites, SEO, social media, influencer marketing, teaching people how to use, even like LinkedIn. And what it's less so inspired, Brent, by your comment, is actually just going, well, there's so many more small businesses that we can get in here, just talking about how they are building their brands. And by default, giving them some airtime, which I always say, you never know. You create a show, and because this all goes into podcast format, people will listen to it forever and a day. And I've shared with you before. I mean, fortunately, with Ebers Radio, I mean, the podcasts are generally between 700,000 and 1 million downloads a month. So at least it's, it's really reaching people in a positive way. So thanks. You've just given me some great food for thought. Kevin, you and I will chat offline. Don't expect to sleep the next week. No, kidding. But yeah, I'm really inspired. So thanks. That's really cool. Thanks, Kev. You wanted to say something?
No, so I'm just, I want to check with you. So in terms of how branding is going and how we build brands, what is coming up for us in the next week? Is that a secret or is it planned yet?
No, not at all. So actually really exciting. Next week, we've got a really amazing lady. I always say that she went from lots of hair to no hair to now being a brand ambassador. Brent's going, is this who I think?
Yeah, who is this?
Wait. I'll let you work it out. She's really someone who's passionate about people. She talks about her mixed family very openly on social media. She's got a great husband that she keeps hidden. And she loves to co-host with you on a Monday. Danny! Yes!
I was like, huh? Danny!
So we've got... Yeah, she's incredible. She's such a beautiful soul. Every time I spend time with Danny, whether it's at an event or whether it's just a WhatsApp, and I just think, she's such a nice person. Can she adopt me? Be my family too.
I think Danny is the epitome of love. Her heart is absolutely just so big. And she's forever being sucked into trying to save the world, make it better, save the animals, look after people, feed them. Yes. And it's because her heart is just so big. She's really just an exceptional human. Awesome. Yeah.
So we've got Danny Paint. So excited, just to have Danny on the show. And so, yeah, Kevin, that's coming up. And then, Kev, you and I need to talk about the last month. Because, I was thinking about this the other day. When the show started, you were interviewing me about marketing things. I think about it, I've never interviewed you.
I like the interview. I don't like.
No. And I think I'm using this moment purely for collateral because I think Brent's going to go yes. And everyone on Facebook is going to go yes. I think I should interview you at the end of this month. So our last ending of October on a big bang should be interviewing you because there's so much going on in your world that I really feel it's a bit time to give you some airtime. B, what do you think?
Yeah, okay. No, I'll do it. I'm happy. And essentially, when we spoke about that before, I was just going, I'm not that, I'm a little bit bland, But let me share and get people out there because I really want to be able to just help people, from this room kind of thing, because that's all I have right now to kind of do this. Yeah. And yet it's turned into what it is. So absolutely, I think that's a fantastic idea. We'll do it. I'll make sure that I have really interesting stories to share.
Taking me 6 months for you to say yes, finally.
So just to end off today, Brent, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate you coming on board. We both follow you intently. I watch how you have those meltdowns.
Professional research, we've covered this. Professional research.
But on the flip side of that, it's so beautiful to see someone kind of be okay with saying, you know what, I'm having a bad bloody day today, and I don't feel like getting out of bed. I've had many of them in the last 6 months. I was like, because one of my highest values is freedom. So the moment you kind of go, oh, well, you have to stay in your house, my brain completely, I was like, no. Yeah. I would just walk to the pavement. I'd walk down the pavement and around the house just to get out of the house. Yeah. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for sharing. If we want to follow and we want to know more about you and the good news, where do we go?
So it's really, really easy. You just go to Good Things Guy. It's on every single platform. Good Things Guy, one word.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. We're on Instagram, Apple News, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, all over the place. You can find Good Things Guy. And then myself is Brent Lindeque. If you want to follow me in my own capacity and see me meltdown, it's fun. It's good to watch.
It is. Yeah, and to end of today, where can we get a hold of you? And then I'll just say everyone could just Google me as well. So, but where do we get hold of Bjorn?
Yeah, so I'm on most platforms as well. I'm not on Google Plus. But at Bjorn Salsone, that's really easy. And
Salsone, yeah.
Salsone, you got it, Kev. Finally, 6 months later. So yes, and Kev, where do we get hold of you?
The quickest would just be hashtag lunchtime series in Google or Business by Design. Or my name, Kevin Britz. Lots of stuff comes up. And that was the aim, you know, to try and be able to share this with people, is so that it be as quick as possible when you Google it. So yeah, my name or Business by Design, that should be the easiest. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for chatting and thank you for making the time. It was a fantastic conversation, Brent. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. Thanks, Brent.
Bye.
Chat to you soon. Ciao, ciao, ciao.